Okay, hello everyone. For today's video, I will be discussing production and consumption. So according to Grindstaff in 2008, media has a big impact for both the consumption and the production of popular culture. When we talk about media consumption, we refer to how we as consumers utilize or use the information or the entertainment that media is providing. Whereas when we talk about production, it refers to how media produce its content that we use for either information or entertainment. Now, the reception or uses of television are undergoing dramatic shifts. So partly because of this pandemic, it has contributed to how we view or how we use television nowadays. Gone are the days when the television is used as a standalone media. When we talk about the television being a standalone media, we refer to it being used exclusively without the aid of other media equipment. However, nowadays, there are already multiple ways on how we utilize the television. So it's no longer just for merely watching live videos, okay, or the programs that are being offered in free TV. Today, we make use of the television for watching videos from the internet, okay, so long as we have the equipment that we put to the television, we can use it for browsing already. Okay, what else? We make use of the television for monitors when we have or when we play video games. And we also make use of the television in terms of monitoring the footages of our CCTV. So we see we have a variety of uses when it comes to the television. Now, the new developments make possible computer-driven interactivity or situations in which viewers can already respond to programs in real time as they are streamed over the internet. Okay, so one example here that I could think of would be Netflix and of course the local counterparts such as iWantTV and the likes. Now, Ivy and Tepper in 2006 made mention about the term the curatorial me. This refers to the capability of curating one's own cultural experiences through savvy internet use and new devices. Although some popular culture scholars have long considered consumption to be active and participatory, even an aspect of production itself, new technologies are forcing a fundamental reconsideration of what it means to consume. So for instance, like what I've mentioned earlier, we can already make use of the television for watching internet, such as our favorite YouTube videos. And in terms of the smartphone, okay, we can also make use of it as our online radio already. Gone are the days when we listen to the actual radio equipment for us to listen to our favorite playlist. So today we are empowered to make our own playlists already, so long as we have free access towards these variety of music genres. What else? For Facebook, it's no longer limited to just simply being a social networking app. It can also be a venue for budding entrepreneurs to sell their goods, through Facebook Marketplace, or for the others, they also make use of the live selling. Okay, so we see we are very innovative when it comes to maximizing what we can do with the media that we are faced with. Of course, through the help of the internet and technology per se. Now, in 2004, Spigel mentioned about the sounds and images multiplying on a variety of delivery systems and platforms. So who knows what consumers are hearing and seeing, much less doing anymore. Thus, the term embedded consumption. When we talk about embedded consumption, we look into the blurring boundary between what the consumers actually consume and the media. So the availability and uses of new media are of considerable sociological relevance. But of course, not only are they implicated in the consumption of other cultural forms, like for instance games, toys, music, and so on, but they also have the potential to widen the digital divide on the basis of age, race, gender, and especially social class. So let's take a look into the potential of technology to be able to divide us. It's not just merely uniting people through bridging the gap between long or far distances. It can also have the power to have or to perform digital division among the users. Okay, so what do we mean by that? We categorize users according to age, race, gender, and especially social class. So, for instance, in communication, we have the term target audience. Like, take for instance, BL series or boy love series. So it's not for everyone's consumption. So most likely it's a series which is for a particular age only or gender and so on and so forth. Okay? So if the recurrence of the production of culture school is understanding the characteristics of the industries that produce cultural goods, then adherents of these school are well positioned to examine the industry processes related to the production, distribution, and marketing of television in both a domestic and international context. So these are going to be explained further in the next slides. Now, we have to take into consideration also Richard Peterson's six-facet model. So according to Richard Peterson and Anand in 2004, these six factors or aspects can explain a great deal about how, when, and why a particular cultural idea or practice forms, okay, emerge and catch on as they do. So what are these six? Technology, law or regulation, industry structure, organizational structure, occupational careers, and of course, the market. So what are the positive side? Today's consumer culture is not bound anymore by old hierarchies of status and distinction. If before the television would signify a social status on the part of the owners, especially for the provinces, right? If you have a television set, you are famous and you are considered to be rich. Today, not anymore. It's no longer the mindset. So long as you have the internet access, then that is actually what is considered as the indicator nowadays. So, invoking Peterson's model of the cultural omnivore, when we recall the term omnivore in terms of science, it refers to beings which consume both plants and animals, right? Now, when we relate it in talks about production and consumption of media, it refers to the explosion of cultural choice. So whether or not we're faced with a diverse array of cultural styles and pursuits, genres, and all these options, we have the power to pick which one would benefit us the most. Okay? So Tepper sees the new cultural environment as participatory, allowing for a thickening of opportunities for cultural expression and, of course, creativity. Thus, because of the reduced cost of artistic production and lessened challenge of reaching audiences, again, because everything comes with a click of our finger, okay, many people are spending much of their leisure time in amateur art making, be it in the realm of music, filmmaking, blogging or vlogging, photography, graphic arts, and any other forms of creative works. So I believe that during this pandemic, it has ignited the creativity among all of us. I know a lot of people who started their YouTube channels, for instance, during this pandemic out of boredom because they would want to have an outlet of their creative juices. So they put up their own YouTube channel or they sign up for these particular social media accounts and the likes. However, there are also negative sides. So the first one is the established media or entertainment industries have converged and consolidated, creating a growing monopolization of popular culture. So such trends are narrowing the gates, crowding out local and independent voices. Okay, so what do we mean by that? Okay, because of the practice of media monopolization, there is a scarcity when it comes to resources if we would want our talents to be known, for instance. Okay, that's the reason why I believe a lot would still want to enter the Pinoy Big Brother house up to this point because again they would want that particular media mileage being offered by the media network ABS-CBN. Okay? Now, working largely within a political economic framework, media critics who document these trends argue that consolidated ownership, centralized control of content, and bottom line pressures in public companies are leading us toward less diversity, less risk, and fewer opportunities for emerging artists or art forms to find audiences. So one example that I could think of here would be Michael Pacquiao. If you recall, there was this time during the duration of this pandemic when he was known because of his talent in rapping. Okay, so many other talented individuals, equally talented individuals, and the public in general have bashed Michael Pacquiao because of this. Okay? They would say that it's because he is a Pacquiao, that's why everything comes easy for him. However, they also are sad about the fact that if you have no resources or if you don't have the name, it would be hard for you to really be well known despite the talent or creativity that you have. Okay, another example that I could think of here would be the phallic painting of actor Richard Gomez. Okay, so if you were familiar with the news before, his painting was sold for a very high price. Again, it was heavily bashed not only by the public, but of course by other equally talented artists and painters as well. Now, what does Tepper has to say? Those with education, skills, money, and time needed to plumb the rich, expressive possibilities of the new cultural environment will be the curators of their own cultural lives. So it talks about social inequality as well, impliedly. Okay? So while people here with less education and fewer resources will increasingly rely on limited or homogenized form of culture provided by consolidated media conglomerates. Again, so if we relate it to the present scenario in terms of the social stratification that we observe in the society, yes, it is a contributory factor that widens the gap between the different social classes. Hence, the result is the creation of a new cultural elite and a new cultural underclass whose differences cannot be captured by the notion of a digital divide separating people on the basis of technology per se. Rather, it is a divide based on how and where citizens get information and culture. So if you're, for instance, part of the lower class and you're only faced with free TV as a means of entertainment, then you're just limited to what free TV can offer. However, if you have the means, if you have the resources, if you can afford all these luxurious entertainment things, like for instance Netflix and so on, then it would also be an indicator that you have more options to choose from. Tepper also implies that the first one, the cultural underclass is composed of low-wage service workers. Again, because they can only afford these means of entertainment or access for information. The middle classes are in a position to be more omnivorous than their low-income counterparts because their time and cultural repertoires are less constrained. Again, they are faced with an option. If they can afford, then they can access. However, if they don't want to, they may afford, but they may not choose to. Okay? So scholars have long documented the creative uses and meanings garnered from the boring products of corporate media giants to appreciate the general point. So it doesn't matter here if you have access to free TV, for instance. You are still faced with the option of whether or not you would want to watch a particular program, then be it. If not, then be it as well. Okay, so at stake are long-standing sociological concerns about the role that culture and cultural hierarchy plays in generating and sustaining social inequality. Which reminds me as well that if you are only availing of the channels that are being offered in free TV, then if the television set that you have cannot access this particular channel, then you have no other choice. Like, for instance, if you only have GMA 7 or ABS-CBN, okay, you can only relate to talks about programs of these particular TV stations. Now, what is conservative populism? It refers to the consequences to the working classes of privatization, deregulation, and the unionization which have been so devastating, inviting the revival of 19th century patterns of wealth distribution. Okay, so in 2004, Frank argues that the primary contradiction of conservative populism is that it is a working class movement that has done incalculable historic harm to working class people. What do we mean by that? Social movement theorists argue that journalists and their sources construct the meaning of issues and events in media discourse, not how these meanings are taken up and understood by ordinary people, or how the views of ordinary people might influence the rhetoric of savvy politicians. So if you recall, one of the issues that ABS-CBN has faced during its recent congressional hearing about the application of its franchise was that they were alleged to be reporting in a biased manner. Okay, so it all boils down to the nature of their jobs. So if you're a journalist, you are empowered to look at certain issues given your certain point of view. In other words, you have the power to interpret such. However, one thing I learned as a former media practitioner as well is that as much as possible, you have to be fair, you have to be unbiased when it comes to reporting facts. Okay? So the politicians that might have seen ABS-CBN news to be reporting biased news might have been victims in the past of their own doings. Okay? So it is not because ABS-CBN reported them to be such. Okay? So they might have been involved in some kinds of controversy in the past which have more or less tainted their credibility. And of course, ABS-CBN being a news network only had its reporters to do their jobs to interpret certain issues. Okay? So again, for media practitioners, it's left to how these particular reporters have interpreted the news. Again, we should not side with any political party in talks like this, but of course, we have to side with the truth and nothing but the truth. Now, in 1992 and 2000, Lamont has explained about the concept of symbolic boundaries. So what is this? It provides a powerful analytic tool, particularly as it relates to working class morality. So Lamont, in her research, suggested that the cultural or moral dimensions of class consciousness are as important as material or economic ones, if not more important. Again, so the emphasis is heavily put into the contribution of these media outputs, okay, and the manner by which we consume the content of media, okay, in terms of how culture is interpreted, in terms of how culture is enriched. So remember that alternative is not, it's never synonymous with progressive. Okay, so we may be faced with a lot of options, but it doesn't mean that it is a clear indicator already that we are considered to be progressive. Okay, it may just be a sign that we are having this different cultural orientation already in terms of production and consumption of media. But again, it does not mean that it is a sign of progress per se. So media scholars have been adept at balancing the domination model of media with evidence of consumer resistance, but clearly domination is not limited to sites of production or to particular types of culture, just as resistance is not limited to particular moments or modes of consumption. So what is meant again by consumer resistance? It pertains to the power of the people, of the consumers, to choose to defy or to resist things that they do not agree with as to how they were presented by media. So inasmuch as we are faced with a variety of options in observance of the culture of omnivorousness, we also have the power to resist. We can deny, okay? Because we may not agree with what a particular media content is portraying, okay? We have the power to resist. That is what is meant by consumer resistance. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to our lecture on production and consumption.